Hi guys, Goffy here, and in today's video I want to talk about 5 Fuji recipes that are loaded into my X100V at the moment. I did a video like this last year and it did pretty well, and if you're interested in 5 recipes other than the ones we're talking about today, then definitely go and check out that video. In terms of the format today though, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you some images from last weekend where I went through all 5 recipes and talk about the creators behind them, because importantly, it's not me making these recipes, there's other people out there doing the hard work, and I'm going to share their socials and things as we go. Then once I've gone through the 5 recipes and all the settings, what we're then going to do at the end of the video is a bit of a comparison. I'm going to show you the same image with all 5 recipes applied, and you can then really hone in on which recipes it is that you like. First up then is a recipe by a guy called Avon Nordhagen. Now if you recognise that name, it might be because you watched my previous video, and in my previous recipe video, his recipe New America was by far my most used. And this year, things are pretty similar. I've been using his recipe called Chrome, which is using Pro Negative High to kind of replicate the classic Chrome look that we all love. Now classic Chrome on his website, he points out, has a little bit too much cyan in the blues for his taste. So he's kind of taken Pro Negative High and amended it to try and fix that problem. And it also offers a little bit of a softer contrast curve as well. Now in my own findings, what this means is it is a super versatile recipe that can be used just about anywhere. The look is kind of subtle, and I really like that in most of my images. A lot of the time, I don't want a super overpowering recipe, I just want a versatile, straight out of camera look, and this is the one I'm going for at the moment. If you really enjoyed this recipe, then make sure you hit up his website and his socials down in the description. Next up then, we have a recipe that is very new to my camera. I loaded it up just before we went to Weymouth, and from the trip, it ended up being one of my favourites. Now the recipe is called Dawnstar, and it's by a guy called Justin Gould that yet again has an absolute killer website. There seems to be a link between people that are making good websites and good Fuji recipes. There's so many recipes on his website, and this is the first one I think I've actually used of his and ended up being one of my favourites, so there's got to be more on there. This Dawnstar recipe has quite a strong warm tint to it, and on the website he describes it as being a recipe that is great for kind of extending your sunset and sunrise hours, as it has that kind of warmth to your image. I actually found that it ended up being more versatile than it sounded, and if you actually used it on the kind of overcast conditions we had, I think it had a pretty strong kind of filmic feel to it, and I ended up really enjoying it even in them conditions. However, this is a recipe that definitely comes alive when you use it in good light, and if you wait until the comparison images towards the end of this video, then you'll see just how good this recipe is in the right situations. Next up then, another recipe maker from my previous video. If you have watched my previous videos, Ivan Yolo might be a name you recognise. Again, absolutely ridiculously good website, full of lots of recipes, but the one I've been using, Vision Obscura. Vision Obscura has been made to mimic Kodak Vision 3 film, the 250D variant, and it has a very strong, kind of grungy look to it. The colours are a little bit muted, and you've got a lot of contrast in there, and I've been using it kind of hand in hand with the first recipe that we spoke about, the Chrome, because I feel like they offer a very similar look, but one's kind of a light touch, and one of them's far more. This one packs that kind of punch if you really want your JPEGs to have something about them. So hand in hand with the Chrome recipe, I think these two complement each other very, very well. Next up then, recipe 4 is by a guy called Mike Chudley here on YouTube. If you don't know who Mike is, definitely go and check out his channel. It's full of Fuji content and street photography content, and very, very recently he dropped a video sharing his own personal recipe. Now this recipe is a very strong, warm toned recipe, and it works best in really good, bright, sunny conditions. Again, didn't really match Weymouth too well, but the comparison images towards the end of this video, it really come alive. It has a Kelvin value of 6,200, which is where all of that warmth comes from, but it is also based on the Astia film simulation. Now Astia, I think, is criminally overlooked, and it ends up giving you these kind of softer tones in your image that I think a lot of us want, but we just don't really associate to picking Astia when we're picking a simulation for our Fuji recipes. So if the algorithm hasn't sent you Mike's way, then definitely go and check his videos out. They're really, really good, and I thoroughly recommend them. Finally, this list would not be complete without a good black and white recipe, and the one I've been using is by a fellow YouTube creator called Andre Dimer, and I actually stumbled across his channel whilst looking for this recipe. It's again absolute goldmine of a YouTube channel, and I thoroughly recommend you check it out. But his recipe Bad Ink has been the one programmed into my X100V for the last few months. I absolutely love how the images look. It's based off of monochrome rather than acros, and I like that it's got a high amount of contrast but hasn't gone too far that you end up just destroying any shadows and highlights in your image. Finally then, what we're going to do next is a bit of a comparison. We're going to take each of those 5 recipes and apply them to some of my favourite images from the last 6 months or so, all taken on the X100V. Now if you're wondering how on earth I'm able to do this, then you should definitely check out my video on how to make your own Fuji recipes. It's to do with plugging your camera into your MacBook or laptop and using the Fuji software. You're able to take previously shot images and apply recipes to them. So definitely check that out if you don't know how I'm doing this. But what we're going to do then is dive into the comparisons now. First up then, I want to look at a well-lit scene, because that was something we were sorely lacking when we was in Weymouth. And I think this is where the warmer recipes really begin to shine, because the high Kelvin value that's set in them starts to balance out a little bit with all of that daylight. In terms of the 2 Chrome recipes, they take quite a bit of colour out of your image, definitely offering a stylised look. Then in terms of a street scene, I kind of like all of the recipes, to be honest with you. They just offer a very different look depending on what you're going for. A lot of people might not like that warm look to their street scenes and prefer the muted colours. And then when it comes to high contrast, again, I normally find that some Fuji recipes are just too strong, but all 5 of these recipes I think balance out that high contrast quite well. Although the Vision Obscura one might be a little bit too much for my own tastes. And then when we get round to golden hour, again, this is where that Dawnstar recipe I think really shines, and that was the intention of this recipe. And the Chrome ones and the black and white just take a little bit too much out of that kind of golden hour look. And then I spoke earlier in the video about how the Chrome recipe and the Obscura one actually go quite well hand in hand. They both offer a bit of a muted look, but one far stronger than the other. And these 2 recipes, I interchange between them quite frequently because I think they go so well together. And then focusing in on the 2 warm recipes, the Dawnstar and Mike Chudley's, they offer 2 very different looks. And again, this is why they both live on my camera. Depending on what look I want, not just a warm one, I've got these 2 different recipes that I think complement each other so well. And then finally, it's hard not to like black and white, and Bad Ink just offers that big punchy contrast without going too far. And I absolutely love it on my camera, and I've been shooting more and more black and white recently. And then finally, for the night shooters amongst us, this is where I think the warm recipes fall apart a little bit. That really high Kelvin value just doesn't suit night photography, whereas the Chrome and the Bad Ink, I think, are the 2 here that stand out as being my favourites. So there we have it then. There's the 5 recipes that I've been using at the moment. And if you've enjoyed this video and you enjoy these recipes, then make sure you reach out to the guys that made them, because it's not me that's done the hard work here. I'm just showing you other people's kind of effort. But if you have enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like and subscribe, because there's plenty more content like this coming. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.